right. So, Casey Hugo, you are a former insurance adjuster.
Correct.
In your training, were you taught that an initial estimate was all that should be paid on a claim?
No, I was trained that the initial site visit would you would create an initial estimate to provide the customer with and the contractor with something to get them started. Basically, it would typically be accompanied by a check as well. And I was actually often told to specifically tell the customer that this is not the final estimate or the final payment.
Aha. So, many times you would probably write an estimate, and at the end of the project, you would write a supplemental payment to make up for what the job actually cost.
Correct. The contractor would typically submit specialty invoices, plumber, electrician, whatever it may be. Sometimes they would let me know specific things took longer to complete. For example, maybe demo of wallpaper. I remember a specific example. Contractor called me and said, "Oh, it took us 10 extra hours to scrape all that wallpaper off." So I would then go in and adjust the estimate accordingly and submit a supplemental payment.
Sure. Now on contents, as a insurance adjuster, would you ever estimate contents by square footage of a room?
No, I did not find that line item in Xactimate to be accurate. According to my knowledge, that line item covers the cost to remove and then reset the contents, probably from one room to another. It doesn't include anything for pack out, actually packing things out, moving them from the site to the storage facility, or packing them back in. It doesn't include anything for inventory. So I would always estimate based off of labor hours because I always found that to be the most accurate.
Okay, and so speaking of inventory, recently, within the last couple of years, we became aware of photo inventorying people's contents, mainly for liability. When did you first become aware of the importance of doing an inventory and photo documenting that inventory?
Well, as I was adjusting, I did often run into situations where a customer would complain that something was damaged and the contractor saying they didn't damage it. There was a lot of liability issues, a lot of things that went on between the customer and the contractor that I wasn't allowed to get involved in unless it was a preferred service provider, in which case oftentimes they would try and pin it on the insurance company, in which I would have to get involved and work out the issues. So I did, at that time I thought, there's got to be a better way to inventory. And just a couple of years ago, I found the Total Contents, which is a digital photo inventory system that I
yes.
seemed to be.
So the total content system, you trained for that as well, right?
Correct.
And how does that total content system work when dealing with people's contents from their home?
It is a digital photo inventory. So basically what that means is the trained content supervisor will go in with a crew. They will fill out forms. There's a whole packet of forms for the customer to fill out that basically the whole system is designed to protect the liability of the contractor who is handling the personal property as well as the customer, because if something is damaged in the process, the customer should be reimbursed for the damages. If something was damaged prior to the contractor arriving, this system will actually document that and protect the contractor from liability that should not be theirs.
So say if grandma's vase already had a chip in it and it was documented, then the insurance company might not have to pay for that $2,000 vase because Total Contents system has you photographing that vase before you even bubble wrap it and put it in a box and take it to storage.
Exactly. The system will require that the supervisor initially walk in and take photos of the entire area before anything is touched to basically establish the conditions. And they also take detailed photos of everything as they're being packed into the boxes or as they're being labeled. Each label will have specific information on it, and a picture will be taken of a label, and then the corresponding item or the items that are going into that corresponding box all the photos will then come after that. So it makes it really easy to locate things. If the customer is looking for something specific, they can go through the inventory. When they find that item, they can back it up and say, oh, okay, my item is in this box, call the contractor, ask them to pull that one box. So it makes it not only easy for customer service purposes, but it does protect both customer and contractor.
Well, and if damage happens because of someone moving something during a loss, or if, I guess I should say, if a client says damage happened because of something that someone is doing during the loss, but in fact their memory isn't correct, it actually could save the insurance company thousands of dollars if
Correct.
they say, oh, that antique there, they might not have noticed that it had a big crack in it, but because RPC or any company took photos of it, it showed that there was that little crack there, and so really the insurance company is off the hook because we photo documented it.
Correct. There was a specific example during my training with Total Contents that they gave. There was a house that had some kind of water damage, lots of items all over the place. The contractor went in there and took the initial photos, and the next day, a couple days later, before anything had been moved, there was a fire, and the customer had accused the contractor of moving a painting onto a furnace, I believe it was, and it caused a fire, smoke damage everywhere. They tried to pin it on the contractor, and the contractor was then, trying to explain this wasn't us, we didn't touch it. They actually had the photographs to prove, because they went in there and took the photos, that painting was set there before they touched anything. That painting was there originally.
So it could save
it
everybody.
Wiped out, their liability there.
Nice. Now, on Xactimate, there are line items where you could bill per box. In reality, that would maybe just be used as an estimate for contents, because that isn't really accurate in real life, is it?
No, I don't believe it's accurate. I do believe it would be a good starting point for estimating. If you walk into a room and say, okay, I think it'll take, 20 boxes to pack out this room, you can kind of get the estimate going that way. And, maybe it is accurate when you go back in the end and look over all the actual labor.
Sure.
It could be, but in my experience, it's not. Simply because it only covers the labor to inventory and pack out boxes. But most people don't have just stuff that fits into boxes. People have items. People have furniture,
Sure.
large items that aren't put into boxes, and that cost of inventory and pack out per box doesn't account for the cost that it will take and all the labor hours to
Sure.
put in for someone to go in and photo inventory and document, disassemble large items if necessary, move them out to the storage facility.
When you brought up furniture, that brings up two things. I remember in Oregon City, there was a job where we had to take everything out through the basement, haul it 2 floors up the hill to get to the garage, and then out to the street. And so you can't really, if you're hauling a couch, and you have to take 3 breaks along the way because it's a steep bank, it's built on a hill, there's 82 steps. There's really no line item to estimate that.
Exactly, and that's why as an adjuster, I always used labor hours. I never used the per box or square footage item. I just never felt that was accurate. And
Sure.
Any contractor I spoke with always agreed.
Right. Now, when you were an insurance adjuster, you a lot of times would meet with a contractor at the site and try to formulate the estimate together.
Correct.
And so RPC still does that, I know, with a lot of independent contractors and still a lot of insurance companies. But there are a few that don't really do that. And so in their way of thinking, an estimate is what you're supposed to pay. But when you were an adjuster, you always paid by what the contractor actually performed the work. By their hours on their logs.
I would. That's sort of correct. I wouldn't put it exactly like that.
Okay.
I would meet with them initially. We'd go about the loss together and come up with a pretty good estimate. Then in the end, if there was anything additional labor hours for contents, for example, an invoice for an electrician. There's always open items, specialty things like HVAC work and electrical, plumbing, things that you can't really accurately estimate on Xactimate. You leave those as open items, and then at the end the contractor will send in invoices and information, photos, any kind of documentation that I could get that would allow me to then go in and adjust the estimate and then pay based off of that.
Sure. So that's a big difference, the original estimate compared to the final invoice.
Correct. Yes, there is a difference.
Now, in your job now as an estimator and putting the bills together, not only for RPC, but you've done it for a couple of other places as well. You find that well, tell us, how do you put the bill together? That might sum up everything for this situation. An original estimate, I know you can do on software, and it gives you a rough idea. But how do you put the invoice together at the end of the project?
At the end of the project, it's a matter of taking the file full of invoices, job logs, receipts, any information according to what the job cost and what labor it took to do it, and then I just review everything in the file and adjust it according to that. Sometimes it's less than the initial estimate. Most of the time it's more. Typically, like I said before, there's open items because I still do write initial estimates as I did when I was adjusting, leaving open items, the initial estimates just based off of my scope, information I gather from the contractor, the crew on site, and it's not an accurate invoice billing. Very rarely is it, unless it's something very small and straightforward. But the average loss, it does require going back through the file at the end to come up with an accurate invoice.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.